My name is Karine Meyer. I'm the Chief Executive of Drake Music. Drake Music is an organisation that is based in England, and our main office is in London, but we work all over the country with disabled musicians of all ages and all musical abilities. And we also work internationally. And I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do and why we exist. So who's Drake Music? We are leaders in music, disability, and technology. We advocate and we innovate, and we support and champion disabled musicians of all ages, from beginners to professional musicians. We use technology creatively and imaginatively to remove disabling barriers to music making. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while. We bring musicians and technologists together, say in the classroom or at a professional musician level, or for example, in our research and development program, to collaborate, to inspire each other, and to design new and creative approaches to making music and to making accessible instruments. Alongside this, we play an advocacy and an influencing role at national level, and we support the arts sector to develop and to become much more diverse and inclusive. We train music teachers, we offer professional development opportunities for disabled workshop leaders, and we deliver a really diverse range of educational projects across the country to develop the next generation of disabled musicians. And we try and open source our technology to help spread our practice and our ideas further. Drake Music began as an educational, experimental kind of educational project in the late 1980s in London. And we actually became an official charity, an official organization back in November 1993. And since then, we have provided thousands of music making opportunities with, by, and for disabled people of all ages. Our practice and our approach have grown out of our kind of long history of collaborating with disabled musicians using all kinds of technologies creatively. And central to this is that the development of technology is shaped by the people we collaborate with. In other words, our practice and our programs are disabled-led. Equality, diversity, inclusion, and also social justice are really at the heart of our work. They're kind of woven into the fabric of our organization and our practice, and it underpins everything we do. And our vision is a world where disabled people have the same range of opportunities, the same range of instruments as non-disabled people, and a culture of music making where disabled and non-disabled musicians of all ages and all musical abilities can participate, collaborate, make music and perform as equals, and where equality, access, and inclusion are the norm. And we put quality music making at the heart of everything we do, connecting people locally, nationally, and internationally. All Drake Music's work is underpinned by the social model of disability. And we recognize that our society creates barriers that disable people and that stop people from realizing their creative and musical potential and ambitions. And what's really, really important to everything we do is that we don't do to or for. The work we do is disabled led. So what's critical is that somebody with lived experience of disability, a disabled person, is leading on and informing and developing Drake Music's practice. And our expertise lies in the kind of imaginative and innovative use of accessible technologies to remove those barriers that I talked about earlier. And you will see some examples of this in our videos. And as I said as well, is that we collaborate with disabled people and musicians of all ages to make great music. Part of our work, a very important part of our work, is we design and create new accessible instruments, and we commission and present cutting edge new work by disabled musicians. We also provide tailored training opportunities to artists and deliver groundbreaking education and participatory initiatives with, by and for disabled people of all ages. So why does Drake Music exist? I mean, as we know, non-disabled people can make music in many ways. And what we want is the same for disabled people. So disabled people have choice, they have equal opportunities, and they have access. And we passionately believe that everyone has the right to make music. In fact, music is a human right. We deliver our activities across 3 major programs. One is research and development. The other program is arts and collaborations. And the third program is learning and participation. So our research and development program supports disabled people who want to make music, but who may not be able or may not want to play conventional instruments. And many of the instruments that we know of are not designed with accessibility in mind. So as part of our research and development program, we bring together disabled musicians, technologists, instrument makers, to invent and design and create and reimagine new instruments that are fully accessible to disabled musicians. And there's a real need for a broader variety and much more choice in terms of accessible instruments. A key part of our research and development program is something called a hackathon, which we started running back in 2012, 2013. And they're about inspiring new thinking and innovation in music making and musical instrument design. And events like that allow technologists and makers and artists and Drake Music to kind of, come together in a program and in a process that constantly challenges the assumptions of what is music and what is a musical instrument. And they give space for experimentation. Through these hackathons, a lot of new instruments have developed over the past 9 or so years. And what's really, really important is that we create a space for experimentation where it's also okay for things not to work and for things to fail, so that we can learn from that. And but one of the instruments that has come out of our research and development program and out of our hackathons is the Telecaster.
There's a window of hope in our dreams. There's a
John came to our research and development team several years ago with a very simple request. He wanted to play guitar, but there were no guitars in the world that enabled him to play guitar. So we invented one with and for and by John, working with a team of people around him. There's a lot more in the video where you can see John playing the guitar and also talking about the development and the experience. So now the Telecaster, John takes the Telecaster to play concerts, at festivals, in theatrical performances, and it is a concert grade instrument. So I then want to talk a little bit about our learning and participation program. Through our learning participation program, we work with disabled children and young people, both in school and educational settings, and also in community settings. And we provide a very diverse range of music making projects. So one of the most important things in our learning and participation program is to reinforce what we call cause and effect in a young person's musical development and intentional music making. We want to make sure that every young musician understands that they are in control of the sounds they are making and kind of have the realization of, wow, I'm doing this. I'll give you two brief examples of our learning and participation work. The first one was a project we did some years ago in a school called Assistive Music Technology Ambassadors. What you'll see in the video about assistive music technology ambassadors is actually young students in the school teaching other young students in school how to use technology. So, and that to us is still a very special project. So what you see is some peer learning and sharing. And actually what we did is we first explored with a small group of young musicians various different kinds of technology, and they then took the role of the teacher or the workshop leader and started working with other young people in the school. And then the other project I want to talk about briefly is our work with British Council Japan and Kawasaki City Council, which we developed over a 4-year period. And that work is now coming to an end. But a very important part of that was a close partnership with Tokyo Symphony Orchestra and with Kawasaki City Council, obviously facilitated by British Council Japan. And we trained musicians from the orchestra to work in educational settings. So to work in schools with disabled children and young people and use technology to make music. And that resulted in a piece that the young people from the different schools created and composed themselves, working closely with musicians from the Tokyo Symphony Orchestra and with musicians from Drake Music. And their piece was performed at a concert in Tokyo in August of this year. And the piece was called the Kawasaki Suite. So then I want to talk about our third program, our Arts and Collaborations program, which is really focusing on developing and supporting professional disabled musicians, be they emerging or already established professional musicians. In the UK, opportunities for disabled musicians to develop and hone their musicianship and opportunities to perform are still very, very limited. There isn't much of an to provide musicians with the support and opportunities they need and want. So what we do is we create these opportunities for making music, and we create opportunities for performing music, and we commission artists to make new work. One example of that, and you will see this in the video, is a showcase event that was called The Radical Sound of Many. And this showcase took place in 2018 at the Barbican Centre, which is a big music centre in London. And it was a showcase of 5 brand new commissions created and performed by disabled artists. The final example I want to mention is a project called Planted Symphony. And that is a piece of work that we first commissioned in 2017. And it took place initially at the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park as part of the Liberty Festival in London. Since then, the project has developed and has gone on tour this year. And the Planted Symphony video shows much better than I can ever explain what was so important about that piece. Because in the Planted Symphony performance, the audience became the players, almost like a players in an ensemble or in an orchestra. So they had a role to play. It was an outdoor performance, and it was using technology in all kinds of exciting and imaginative ways. And it ended up being a really exciting performance, an outdoor experience for people of all ages and all abilities to enjoy.
네, 설명 잘 들었습니다. 한국 장애인 문화예술원의 무장애예술 주간 탭톡 세션 2 모더레이팅을 맡은 작곡가 이나림에입니다. 드레이크 뮤직 이제 홈페이지도 가끔씩 들어가서 훔쳐보고 그 비슷한 단체들의 활동도 보고 또 유튜브의 링크들도 가끔 보면서 여기는 무엇을 하는 곳이고 어떻게 일을 하길래 이런 영상들과 이런 음악 만들기를 하나 궁금해 하곤 했는데, 오늘 이렇게 캐린 메이어 대표님의 발표를 듣고 나니까 그 궁금증이 없어진과 동시에 또 다른 질문들이 생겼어요. 그래서 저희가 이제 저뿐만 아니라 이렇게 음악을 하는 많은 분들이 궁금해하실 그런 질문들을 뽑아서 제가 지금 대화를 하고 질문을 하고 조금 더 이제 가까워지는 계기를 마련하고자 합니다. 드레이크 뮤직 런던이 지금은 테크놀로지를 많이 이용하시는 것 같은 인상을 받았는데, 처음 시작은 어떤 음악으로 시작하셨고 어떤 사람들이 함께 했는지 궁금합니다.
Okay, so I've been working with Drake Music since 2006, but Drake Music obviously has been in existence for much longer than that. And the music we make has obviously changed because music and musical expression in society is changing over the years. But and the other thing that has changed and is constantly changing is how we use technology to make music. When I first joined, we worked, I think, primarily with people who had physical impairments. So but that has kind of changed and evolved over the years.
그 드레이크 뮤직과 함께 음악 만들기를 하는 장애인 예술가들이나 학생들의 수요는 어떻게 개발을 했는지, 어떤 식으로 그분들과 연결이 돼서 일을 하게 되는지, 그 사람들을 찾는 것도, 같이 할 사람들을 찾는 것도 한국에서는 쉽지 않기도 하거든요. 그래서 그런 것들이 조금 궁금합니다. 예.
It's a real mixture in terms of how that works for us here in England and in the UK, because very often people will come to us So they will ring us or they will email us and say, we work with children, with disabled children in a school, but we don't quite know how to deliver a really musical, accessible and meaningful music lesson. And then we also have disabled artists, disabled musicians who will contact us and say, I really want to develop my music making practice, but I don't have the instruments. I can't find any instruments that I can play at a level that I want and need to.
그랬을 때 그런 사람들의 아주 개인적인 출발의 뭐 질문 같은 게 왔을 때 어떤 식으로 대처해서 프로그램을 이제 따로 짜시는 건지 아니면 그런 것들을 이제 모아가지고 통틀어서 뭐 연간 계획을 짜시는 건지 그런 계획의 단계가 궁금합니다.
It does vary a little bit because we need to understand first who we're working with and what people's access requirements are. But say, for example, when we work in a school with children with who face disabling barriers, disabled children, what we tend to do is work in very, very small groups. So a lot of our work is, say, in a group of maximum 6 to 8 young people, working with usually 2 Drake musicians and technologists and the teachers. So it is a lot of one-on-one work or small group work. So you get to know each other and understand what people's musical aspirations are and how they want to make music.
굉장히 정교하면서 끈끈한 관계 같은 것이 음악 안에서 음악을 통해서 이루어지는 것처럼 보이는데요. 그것이 음악 이외의 어떤 그 사람과 사람과의 관계도 집중을 하셔가지고 고려를 하시는 게 또 드레이크 뮤직의 일 중 하나인지 궁금합니다.
In a way, I think it kind of goes hand in hand. The more you work with someone, the better you get to know the person you're working with, and the better the connection is between the young musician or a professional musician, for example, and the Drake music workshop leader or technologist. So in that sense, kind of a personal relationship and understanding where each person is coming from is important.
저희 나라는 장애인 학교, 특수학교가 따로 있고 또 그다음에 장애인 학생인데 일반 학교에 가서 음악 교육을 받는 경우가 있고 그런 이제 케이스 바이 케이스로 여러 가지 음악에 액세스할 수 있는 경우들이 다른데 영국에서는 그 학생들이 학교에서 어떤 식으로 음악 교육을 받고 있는지 특히 이제 장애인 학생들이 음악을 배울 때 어떤 특별한 프로그램이 있을 때 드레이크가 인볼브할 수 있는, 그러니까 참여할 수 있는 그런 기회들을 어떻게 만드시고 확산시키고 하는지 그런 것들이 궁금합니다.
What you've described in terms of what's happening in South Korea music education, there are some similarities here in the UK. So we have special education and special schools, and many disabled children and young people attend those schools. But then there are also mainstream schools, and some disabled children and young people attend those. So what's really important to us is that whether it is a music lesson in a special school or in a more mainstream school, that the music making is accessible and that everybody can take part. And what that sometimes means is that we need to work very closely, for example, with both management at schools and with the teachers themselves to train them up in terms of how to use technology, but also in terms of how you can really create opportunities to enable young people to have control over their music making.
그 모든 사람들이 음악을 만들 수 있는 어떤 음악 창작의 가능성에 대해서 굉장히 열린 단체라는 인상을 받았는데, 그런 생각은 언제부터 하게 되셨는지, 그것은 여러 사람들이, 그리고 그런 생각을 가진 사람들이 모여서 지금 이 단체를 이끌어 가고 있는지, 그런 것들이 궁금합니다.
Things have changed and evolved. Of course, you know, Drake music has been around now since the late 1980s. The mission or the vision as it is now, and which I talked about earlier in the presentation, is really something that I felt very, very strongly about at the time and still do, is that it is about creating a world where people can work together as equals, where you remove the barriers to music making. So you don't focus on somebody's impairment, but you focus on the barriers that our society has put in place. The other thing that I felt very strongly about and still do, and so does our team, is that actually what's important in our society is that it's disabled and non-disabled people working together to make music and working together to achieve change. And one of the things that I learned and again feel very strongly about is that non-disabled people have a lot to learn from disabled people. But usually in our society, it's looked at it being the other way around. And actually, let's do away with all of that and say, we are working together and we connect across difference. And what's also really important to us, which links to what I've just said, is that at Drake Music, we ask the question, or we challenge, what is music? And we also challenge or question what is a musical instrument. So we throw things open and say, music isn't just what most people think it is. There are all kinds of different ways of making music. The same with musical instruments. And we may not yet know what new musical and accessible instruments are going to look like because they haven't been invented yet. So it is not about fitting into the mainstream. It is about leading the way.
오늘 이제 마지막 질문을 좀 할 텐데요. 2022년에 드레이크 뮤직의 활동 계획이 궁금합니다. 그래서 그것에 대해서 설명해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
The world of disability arts, the world of artistic expression, of technology, it changes, it develops all the time. And I think that's the same, I think with Drake Music, we evolve and we change and we respond to what's happening and to what the people's requirements are, what people want to do. There is huge scope to particularly develop, I think, our practice around innovation and experimentation with music and musical instruments. So we have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go, where there is still a lot to do and to learn and to develop. The future for Drake music is extraordinary and also challenging, but we have big plans for how we're going to develop our work and expand our work.
네, 오늘 말씀 너무 감사드리고요. 언젠가 영국이나 한국에서 꼭 다시 만나 뵙고 서로 공유할 수 있고 나눌 수 있는 이야기들을 나눴으면 좋겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Well, thank you very much. It's been wonderful to talk about Drake music, and thank you for giving us that opportunity. And I hope people find it interesting to hear about the work that we do.